After having attached the sleeves onto the sweater, sadly the next step showing what to do is lost, so I will just explain it. In the first row, after having attached the sleeves, you knit together the last stitch from the sleeve with the first stitch of the body of the sweater, 4 places, and that is here, and then you just knit across till you get to the second sleeve, and here, and you knit the sleeve, and then you just do the same on the back side, so 4 decreases. And when you have done so, you will repeat this operation in every 3rd row to begin with, and what to do next will be explained in the next clip, and the technique of how to knit the stitches together will also be demonstrated later. So now I have jumped a couple steps ahead. The last thing I explained was that I would knit 2 together in each side of the sleeve for every 3rd row. I have done so, I think in a total of 7 times, and then I have done the same 6 more times, only then I did it in every 2nd row, and at the end I have done it in every row until I am left with 9 stitches on top of each sleeve. So the next step is to count 17 stitches from here. I have the seam between the sleeve and the body of the sweater, and I count 17 stitches, and that will be the shoulder, and I place a marker, and I do the same from the other side. I count 17 stitches and I place a marker between and after the 17th stitch, and I do the same on the other side. And what I do is that I just begin to knit those stitches. I just keep following the pattern. And the reason why I use this yarn as a marker is just so that I don't have to count all the time and rely on myself counting right all the time. So here I have arrived at my first marker. So just keep knitting. Until I arrive at the next marker, which is here. There, there is my last stitch before the marker. So what I do next is that I transfer the stitches between the markers, the ones I have just knitted, onto a separate knitting needle. It could be a safety pin or just some leftover yarn, whatever you have. And the stitches that I now transfer onto my other needle, those will be part of the neckline, and the 17 on each side will be part of the shoulder. There, that's all my stitches. And what I do next is I just keep knitting. Just stay in the picture here. And now I will keep knitting until I get to the sleeve again. And I'm getting closer. And here you can see I have, as I explained earlier, here I have, it looks like a seam of stitches where this is the body of the sweater and this is the sleeve. Then I take this stitch and I knit it together with the first stitch of the sleeve. Just make sure I don't catch any other yarn. Like this. I keep knitting the sleeve. Just have to move my stitches a bit. And when I get to, here I have the second side of my sleeve. Here is the seam between the body of the sweater and the sleeve. So then I will take the last stitch of the sleeve and I knit it together with the seam stitch. Like this. And then I repeat the same operation on the second half of the row. So I do the same both in the back and the front. So now I have done the same in both the front and the back. So here I have used the safety pin and here another knitting needle. And now I will show you how I make the shoulders and the rest of the neckline. So I'm here at the beginning of my row and I just make sure I follow the pattern. So now it's time to knit and purl. There. And when I arrive at the neckline, I just turn my work around like this. I slip the first stitch And then I have to check on this side to make sure my pattern is, to make sure I follow the pattern like this. And when I have the 2 first stitches, I transfer them onto my safety pin here as well. And these will be added to the neckline. And don't mind the gap here, we'll fix that later. So now I will have to check again. And I will knit my way back. This was... You need to focus a bit when you do this. I think this is probably right. I'll find out later. And when I arrive at the sleeve here, let's see, I have a couple more stitches to go. Let's see here. Yeah, this is the beginning of the sleeve. Then I do as I have done before, and I knit together the stitch that makes the seam and the first stitch of the sleeve. Then I knit, the top of the sleeve. I knit together the last stitch of the sleeve with the seam stitch here again. Then I knit my way to the neckline on the other side. And I do the same thing here. When I turn my work around, I place the 2 first stitches I knit onto this needle, and then I knit my way back to the beginning of the row again. In the recipe I will write how many decreases you should do, but I think it'll be first 2 and then 2, and after that you do 1, no decrease, sorry, the stitches you transfer here to the neckline will be first 2, then 2, and then 1, until you are left with no stitches on top of the sleeve. So when you don't have any stitches left on the top of your sleeve, then it's time to knit the shoulder pieces together, and that will be the next step. Now I have finished knitting back and forward here. I have no stitches left on the top of my sleeve, and I have placed all the stitches I want onto the neckline. So you can see here 2 stitches, 2 stitches and 1, and that I have done on both sides. And next step now is to connect the shoulder pieces, and to do that I will transfer the stitches onto 2 needles like this, and I will, let's say this is for the front piece of the shoulder. like this, and I'll find another needle to, and I'll transfer the rest of the stitches onto that one, and later I will count to make sure I have equal amount of stitches on each needle. So, and this needle will hold the stitches for the back piece of the shoulder. Now I have finished placing all my shoulder stitches onto the two needles. One is for the front and one is for the back. Here's my working yarn, and I have also turned the sweater inside out so that I'm now working on the wrong side. And now I will knit the shoulder pieces together. When I do, I begin to pick up the first stitch as I usually do, then the first stitch on the second needle. I pick up the yarn and I bring it through the first stitch and then the first stitch on the other needle, and I slip it off like this. Then I do the second stitch the same way, pick it up from the first needle, pick it up from the second needle, then I bring the yarn through both stitches and I slip them off the needles. When I have two stitches here, I take the first one and I slip it over the second. Now I have cast off one stitch, then I pick up one, pick up the second, bring the yarn through both, and I slip them off the needle. And I just repeat the operation until I have no stitches left. I just cut the yarn and I pull it through the last stitch when I am finished. I make sure I do not cast off too firm because I'll lose elasticity in the shoulder. And I'll just keep going. So now I'm left, no, this is, now I'm actually in a situation where I had odd numbers of stitches, so that I did not have, so I'm left with one here, and I just knit that one alone. I do the same thing. Then I cut the yarn